Hello and welcome to the Friday Forum on Friday, November 20th, 2015. My name is Elaine Boyd and I will be the facilitator for this Friday Forum. So we have a couple of questions that were submitted ahead of time, and we actually have only one person here today, Miss Melissa, who submitted some very good questions. So before we pull in Melissa to ask any other questions, I'm going to go through the questions that she submitted ahead of time. So her first question, I'm starting with the easiest ones and then I'm going to the more difficult ones, is how can you view an inactive student in the current school year? So let me log into MMS. I've got it up here right now. Now, Melissa, I do have a question for you about the student that you're asking to see. Is it a student that was with you last year, but you know they weren't coming back this year? Or were they started out your school year and then left?
Actually, it's twofold. We had a student who had left from last school year at the very end, and she returned. And so when I initially tried to look at her record because she was no longer active, I couldn't find her, of course, in the 15-16 school year because we had inactivated her. But I was curious if we could, in the same school year, look at students who were no longer here, or if we had to switch the date every single time. So it was just kind of confusing on my end because I'm still learning how to navigate through the generations, and I was just curious what would be the easiest method in trying to look at any student who had left if we had a phone call from the current district where they might be attending and just grabbing that information and sharing it.
Right. So if a student was with you last year and you knew going into this current school year that they were not going to be with you, as part of the school year maintenance, we generally only carry forward to our new school year the students that we know are going to be returning. So if it was a situation such as that, then you would have to go back to your previous school year and pull up that student's record. So there's no way getting around that. But if in the other scenario that the student actually started with you and then they left, so when a student leaves, you're going to withdraw that student and then you're going to come into, actually I was in the right spot, the biographical editing jobs and the operation of set student active, inactive status, and generally we only have to set them inactive for biographical. And when we do that, so Amy, I'm picking on Amy here, my favorite student, so I'm going to set her inactive because she left my school. I'm going to exit and save, and now when I go to biographical, Amy isn't going to be there. So I land on Christine, her sister, but Amy is usually my first student and she's not there anymore. So the easiest way to see her, I mean, I could go to the previous school year because she was an active student then, or I can change my filter to all students. Generally we land on all active students, and if I change it to all students sorted by, I don't know which, I think this is the default one. MMS ships with 4 default filters. You can't delete, maim, or mutilate those filters. They are always pristine. So I've set it to all students, and now if I go back to my biographical, I will be able to see her. I'm sorted by differently, but if I go here and I go by last name and there's Amy again, and I can pull up her information. So if they weren't carried forward to your current school year, the only place you're going to be able to view their information is in the last school year that they were active. If they had left the current school year and were set to inactive, all you would have to do is change the filter to all students. So There is no easy way if they are not part of that school year to pull up that information. Now, if you have a student that left and then is coming back, and this is something that a lot of schools aren't aware of, so this is actually good information. So you have a student that's coming back, you think they were in your school district before, but you're not quite sure. Rather than taking the chance and creating a new student ID for them and then finding out, oh man, they were here 2 years ago, and now you've got a student that MMS thinks is two separate students because they've got two different ID numbers. What you want to do is you want to go to biographical, you're going to go to operations, and then you're going to do find a student. Now this is a wonderful operation. You can enter in as much information that you have. I mean, obviously last name would be helpful. So my last name, and let's see, that's my son's name. I know he's in here in the database, which is why I can do that. And, middle name, you can put that in if you know it, birth date, and so forth, and then click on Find. Now this searches the whole school database, your whole database, so if you're a multi-school database, it'll go across all schools and also all school years. So for my student William here, I can see all instances of him, a little variation with the middle name there, but I can see that it's the same student. I can see the student ID number, and then if he's actually part of my current school year, but if these, last records weren't here, what I would do is select the most recent record and then copy that record, and it moves that biographical record from that school year to the current school year that you're in. So that's a really nice function. So it maintains that ID number from throughout the student's time in your database. So that was a good question, and I kind of built off on that one a bit. Let's see. I'm looking at your next question. So prepare for January. What would you need to do now to prepare for January? That's a really good question. And the only thing that I can think of that would happen that would be unique to the January timeframe would be starting to think about scheduling for the next school year. I'm kind of leaving out any state reporting because I know you have that as a separate question. So does that kind of fall within what you were asking about?
I was looking at making sure I wasn't missing any steps because I didn't necessarily had to rely on MMS last year. Someone else's role took care of all of that, but I didn't know coming up into the new semester what I should be looking to do at this point. I know that at the beginning of the school year, I had been directed to take a look at the knowledge base and into the school checklist and things like that in the beginning of the school year. So I didn't know if there was something that existed for January, kind of along the same lines.
So whatever you did at the beginning of the school year that was specific to semester one, you would want to review that. So possibly any study hall assignments that may need to be addressed. Depending on how your school year is laid out, you may want to print out student schedules for the second semester. I know my son's schools, they ran block scheduling, and the first semester was completely different than the second semester. So they would have to, verify. They did the whole year scheduling all at once, but, maybe print out the student schedules for semester two. a lot of schools come the January's a little on the early side, but February and March is when they start preparing for scheduling for that new school year coming up. So we do have a knowledge base article on the steps needed to create that new school year. I've already done that for this database. Let me see, let me switch schools here. I don't think I did this for my elementary school. Like I said, we do have a knowledge base article specifically on using the school year maintenance operation. So that's found in the admin menu and school year maintenance. It's currently only offered in MMS generations right now. It's not available in the portal system. School year maintenance is one part, and it's probably the main part of how you are going to create that new school year. So coming in here, I want to transfer my records. This is my database. I do have multiple databases, but most schools will only have the one database. I am a multi-school database, so if I were to do my drop-down menu, I've got 3 elementaries, a middle school, and a high school. I want to deal with my elementary school right now, so it's going to take the records in my current school year, and I'm going to move it over to my new school year, my 16-17 school year. We do have an auto select default tables, and when you are doing this for scheduling purposes, there are some fields that you're going to want to not include, and that is in the, I think it's both in the knowledge base article for school year maintenance as well as that school year maintenance creating the new school year checklist. So most of the, like here you can see the student grade reporting attendance summary table. Things like attendance, grades, skills grades, all of those records belong in the school year that they are associated with. There are a few exceptions to student data, and that would be, and they are actually part of the auto select default tables. So you want to remove these because it can cause some problems with data entry, because those records would already be in your 16-17 school year, but they're not complete yet. People, nurses, I'm looking at my student health tables. Generally, health records you would want to carry over from school year to school year, because the students' immunizations, you need to be mindful of their records from the previous year because they still pertain to this year. So you want to not select those now. So I'm holding down my control key and I'm going to deselect the health student tables, and there's one more there, the student health. Everything else I can include. Now for elementary and middle schools, generally they use the same master schedule as, you know, from year to year. It's not like a high school where they change it up, they change the schedule when the classes are meeting. It's not generally as complicated in a elementary school. Middle schools, I've seen both, where they, you know, they completely redo the section table so everything gets shifted around, teachers get moved around, and then I've seen others where they use the same schedule, they just plug the students in. So depending on how you do your scheduling, you may want to include the section table. That is not included as part of the auto select default, but for my elementary school, I don't use the automated schedule builder. I keep the same courses and sections for the most part from school year to school year. You want to make sure you set your student range. So and my student ranges are all messed up in my database. I need to get them all back in order. You want to make sure that you don't So for my elementary schools go up to 5th grade. So for this is going to have this year's 5th graders. I want to make sure that I don't select them because they'll be moving on to my middle school. So I want to make sure that I deselect them. If I know that I have a returning student that they're not going to be promoted to the 6th grade, I can include them in, or I can move them in after the end of the school year. Rather be positive and assume that they will be able to move on to the middle school rather than be held back. So you want to make sure that you deselect those outgoing students, or you're going to have to set them as inactive in the new school year. And then this is a good time to review your teacher range, your teacher table. If you have a teacher that's retiring and they're not there, or a teacher that left to move on to a different school, you can remove them here. It won't affect transcripts or going back and producing a report card from a previous school year, because those records will still be there for that school year, just not for your current school year. A lot of schools are really paranoid about when they can remove that teacher, and they've got people on their staff table that they don't even know. It's like, yeah, I think it's safe to get rid of those people. And then once you have everything all set up, you would click process, and that will create your new school year. I'm not going to do that for this right here. But that is something that happens in the at the turn of the calendar year, that people start looking towards scheduling. I mean, at this point in January, you've already gone through at least one report card cycle. So your report cards should be all set. Your attendance should be humming along fine. Yeah, anything else should be okay, because
Okay.
you've already gone through one cycle. I do know that in the January time frame, we generally have a release of our software, so that is something to look forward to. And I do believe all hosted schools now no longer have to request when they get to be updated, regardless of whether it's a major release or a maintenance release. It will automatically be scheduled. If you're in a panic about it and you don't want it, then you would want to email implementations@cri-mms.com and let them know that you don't want to be updated, and then you won't. So let's see, so preparing for January, but that's something good for us as a company to review and start and continue building on those checklists, because I think they do have a value. Each school is different, but coming up with a general, this is the season to do report cards, so we do have a checklist for, when you produce a report card, have you totaled up your attendance? Have you calculated honor rolls, and so forth? Which kind of answers the flow chart for basic operations. We do have some. If there are some that, and I do have, let's see, I do have our website up for our knowledge base articles. You do not have to log in to get the knowledge base articles, so anybody who lands on our website, you don't need to log in, you just click on knowledge base. We are working to change it so that you have the ability to view all of the knowledge base articles and not be limited to the search portion. We have had some feedback, and really good feedback, that if you don't know what you don't know, how can you know to search for it? So being able to peruse the different knowledge base articles just to, oh geez, that sounds interesting, and click on it and hopefully learn something. So as I've said, we do have some checklists or flow charts. So if I do a checklist, and let's see what that gets me here. How to get health arts, that's not really a checklist. Are there any checklists in particular you're looking for? Oh, that didn't get me anything.
Not in particular.
Because I could add that to our backlog. So the school year maintenance is a checklist. This is a Massachusetts end-of-year checklist. Maybe I'm not getting it because I spelled it wrong. I don't spell well. Oh, there we go. Administrative checklist for the new school year. These are two Massachusetts-specific checklists. I thought we had a report card one, so I may have to add that one for report cards. But we are aware of our lack of having a flow chart for basic operations. It is on the list of things to accomplish, so be patient. We are getting to it, but if you are looking for something specific, we can add that to our backlog list, and where it is a client request, it will be bumped up in priority. But if we don't know what types of information that our clients are looking for, we can't put it in there.
Right.
Okay, so I'm saving the best one for last. The basics of PIMS recording and how to generate. Okay, so let me go back. Oh, and I'm loaded. I have Rhode Island loaded. So let me switch to Pennsylvania really quick. This is my license file that I am editing. You don't have the ability to do that, but all right, so now I should be in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And there we are. So we do have a couple of webinars that we've done on Pennsylvania specifically. We do have a lot of clients in Pennsylvania. The challenge with those webinars, though, is that Pennsylvania is always fluid. It doesn't sit at one stage for very long. They're always changing what they're looking for. If you have the PA PIMS loaded, there are several areas where you can specifically put in, there it is, information. So for the student biographical, we have the Pennsylvania EDR tab, and this is where you would put in the information that is specific to Pennsylvania. Are you entering in your information here?
I'm still working on finishing up our students for those tabs that are on the screen right now.
Okay. One thing that is very helpful for doing this initial data entry, my mind is going in 3 different directions, and that's never a good thing. For that initial entry, you could go student by student and enter in the information. If there are specific fields where the majority of your students have the same data item,
Okay.
you can save yourself time by using the mass edit biographical information. Are you aware of that?
I am, but I'm a little nervous to use that because it mass edits. So I really steered clear of that one, to be honest with you, Elaine.
All right. I know working with a school that was implementing, entering the data for Vermont, they were in Vermont, so for their school, it was very easy for them to pick a field, and the majority of their students all had the same value.
Okay.
So they could, do a mass edit, select all of their students, and then leave that operation and go to the the biographical editor for those few students that have a different value and then change them. So
Okay.
this operation would only work if the majority of your students all had the same value, or if everybody had all the same value. To do the mass edit with just, changing fields for a handful of students at a time, I don't think I would do that. That would take a lot of time. Another option that's available to you is if we go under Student Biographical Records and then we create a browse. Browse will allow you, it'll set up kind of an Excel-like spreadsheet, but it also allows you to enter in values for those students. So we have a browse under each of the different modules. So this is our biographical tables. So I'm going to create a new browse, and I'm going to call this PIMS. Okay. And now I'm going to edit that browse. And we have access to several tables that are associated with the biographical. So we have our program codes, we have our family codes, mail merge tracking. Let's see, we probably want, I think we can only do one table at a time. We can only do one table at a time. So here we have the student master table, and then we have the two extensions. And I am willing to bet that the majority of the fields for Pennsylvania are going to be in the first table. So here's a bunch of Pennsylvania, so double click. I'm just double clicking, and I don't have to select all of them. I only have to select the ones that I want to actually edit. There's a bunch of Pennsylvania fields. So I'm going to click OK, and now I'm going to, with that PIMS browse selected, I'm going to run my browse. And so here's what a browse looks like, kind of funky looking. I like it. And each record here is actually a different student. And depending on which record I'm on, we have this lovely little browse here. So I can see that on this record here, I am editing Charles Elmpi. I don't know who came up with these last names. I can't pronounce his last name. So we got Charles here. So we can see his ID number, his homeroom, his year grad, and his date of birth. And we can see his Pennsylvania field. So if you have to know what the fields are that you're editing, but rather than going through the student editor, here I can very easily enter in dates. I have no idea what date I just entered in for, but it's really easy to enter in a lot of data fast. I can use my up and down arrow keys. I can use my tab. I can use enter, is the same as tab. And you can limit the view to just a few fields at a time, so you know which fields you're working on, and then you can very quickly see what each student has in for those fields, but also edit that information. So that's another option to get that data in there. Now, one thing that kind of going back to the creating a new school year is a lot of schools are antsy about that, because if I go back, I am back in my high school. So I have my students here in my 15-16. So if I open up my biographical editor, I'm going to see, let's go to Amy. She's my favorite student. Waiting for PA to load there. And if I go back to Amy, oh, she's still inactive. Darn, I'm going to have to change her back. Anyway, so I see Christine here, and we've got her data here, and, you know, Pennsylvania state reporting, the last thing is submitted in June or July of the summer, you know, that would be this coming summer for the 15-16 school year. So this data in here is fluid, could be changing right up until July. But I've already created my 16-17 school year, and the biographical information is already there. So some schools don't like creating that new school year until the current school year has ended. That way they can move everything over and everything's good, and they don't feel the need to have to maintain two different biographical tables. Well, there's no need to maintain the two biographical tables. We have an operation, and this one is also available in the staff portal. So actually, let's do the staff portal version. We have a compare and update. So that would be under the student menu operation, and it's compare and update for the new school year. So once your 15-16 school year has ended, there's no more data entry happening. You can come to this operation, and you can run it twice. Once to add new students from the current school year to the targeted year. So if you had students that entered your school after you rolled your data over, you can copy them to that new school year. Or, and this is why I wanted to show you this, is when you come into this operation, you would select the second option for the selected data fields, apply and edit from the current school year to the targeted year. So we're going to work on our high school. Our targeted school year, we're going to take from the 15-16 school year and copy it over to the 16-17 school year. And these are all of my biographical fields. You don't want to move everything over, because in the selected data in the 16-17 school year, you've already possibly changed what their homeroom is, you've already changed their grade level, and you don't want to undo all of that. What I generally suggest that schools do is they take the contact information, so the student's address, their contacts. All right, so we've got contact information here. We've got the zip code. That's user defined. That's different stuff. So you would do the contact information, and then you would go down to the Pennsylvania fields, so the state reporting fields. Scroll, scroll. Oh, I've got Massachusetts in this database too. And New Hampshire. Yay. The joy of working with multiple schools. It's multiple states here. So here is my Pennsylvania field. So now I'm just double clicking, or I can just keep hitting, actually that's faster. And that way any data that you've entered in for state reporting that may have changed since you've rolled over, you can now move it over. It is going to copy over what is already there in place for the in the 16-17 school year. It won't look at it and say, oh, no, there's data there, we're not going to copy it over. It's going to copy it over. It's not going to give you that choice. So this is a wonderful way of doing this so that you don't have to maintain those two school years. You do want to make sure that your student range is set. That's still important. You want to make sure that you don't Actually, with compare and update, you should be all set, because if a student doesn't have a record over there, it's not going to add that student. If you're nervous about it, you can set your student range to not include you seniors. So that is one way of easily maintaining your data for state reporting. So once you get it all entered in, it's just each year you're just going to add that information to the new students that come into your school, but that information will carry from school year to school year. Right? All right. So once you have so we have Pennsylvania information in the student editor. I accessed that through the biographical editor. This is the same editor, it's just another way of accessing it. We have the staff editor, which is the same as the staff expanded, and there's those Pennsylvania data items. There are also state Pennsylvania fields in the course catalog, and the course catalog rolls over from school year to school year, so that information rolls and you just need to update it for the beginning of the school year. So once you have all of your data entered in, to create the export that gets uploaded to Pennsylvania, that happens in the exports area. So let's see, so I have the PIMS 10.11 standard export, and there's a multiple exports that happen. These are all the student ones. So we have the PA Secure ID, we've got the student snapshot, the special ed snapshots happen, that's a separate export. So I'm not sure if I'm quite answering your questions.
Whenever when you were doing the export there, would you be able to do an example of what the export would look like whenever it processes, or no?
Sure. So I'm just going to enter in a fake district here. Let's do the student one, and let's see, I'm not an expert on the exports. I'm more the data entry person. We don't want only special ed exits. So we would select whichever options that we need here, enter in your school district code, and it's going to create the file name that Pennsylvania wants it. This is defaulting right now to my server, so you need to have set up a folder on your computer that you have access to it when you are logged into your remote desktop into the MMS generations. I think most people have that set up. Do you have a folder set up that you can save to?
Not for generations, I do not, no.
Well, I can show you how to do that. And that is something that you can do on your own without any intervention on our part. So I'm running on a server, but it's not quite real as what your situation would be. So if I click on this is actually the desktop of my virtual machine. So I can set the file name. I'll just save it to where it's going to go. But we'll look at that next. That's a good one. Set access to local computer. Very good. Because it's going to generate a file for you, and it's that file that you upload to the state. So we have our output criteria. This is if you want to limit, if you want to run this for students, say, who have a specific year of graduation. So this sets up a filter based on a biographical field. So if I were to scroll down here, these are all the biographical fields. I'm not sure whether that really happens, but we give you the ability to do that. Depending on which option you select here, these tabs will become available or not available. But for the student export, I have the district transfer withdrawal codes. So we would want to select all withdrawal codes that indicate a transfer within the district. So the student left you, but they stayed within the district. You would select those codes as appropriate. And then once you have everything all set up, you can process. We have a student range. I do believe that if you are running in a multi-school database, you need to produce your exports for PIMS on a multi-school level. So here I have two multiple school setups. This one is all of my students from K through 12, and then I have another one that is just my secondary school, so I think that's my high school and middle school combined. So for a PIMS export, I do believe I would want to be in my all schools setting. So I click on process. I know I'm going to have a bunch of errors because my database is not that robust for Pennsylvania. Maybe I should have not done my full student range. Oh, there we go. So when you generate an export file in MMS, MMS will do a validation of your data. And if we know that Pennsylvania is looking for specific values, say for an entry code, and if you have an entry code for one of your students that is not what Pennsylvania is expecting, it will spit out a report that will let you know that you have some errors, and it'll point to the students and the fields and say, okay, this is not a valid value. You need to change this, and we're going to see a bunch of that because, like I said, my data isn't very valid. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that once you run this export, it's going to be okay. We only can check on things that we are aware of. Like I said, Pennsylvania, their data collection will fluctuate several times during the school year. So I did get a warning message that some students have been found with invalid data. So I have the option of ignoring it, canceling it, or viewing what the errors are. So I'm going to click on my view print. And so here is the student's last name. I have their ID number, and it points to two fields, and the expected graduation time frame is required for a student who is in the 9th grade or higher. So I don't have that. And then grade 9 entry data is required for students in grade 9 through 12. So I'm missing some fields here. For Charles, I think that's Charles, the homeroom field is empty. So it's pointing out all those mistakes. So and some students have more errors than others, but it's pretty good. So I can see I have a bunch of homeroom fields that are empty that I need to go back and check those. So you can save this file. I can print it. I can save it as an Excel or a PDF document, so that way I have this and I can reference it and fix the errors. Now, the next time I run it, I may find some other errors. Some of the fields for Pennsylvania are set so that they are conditional fields. So if you have a value in a specific field, then you need to have values in, one or more other fields. So once you correct things, then it may trigger other invalid data. But I've created this file. So let me see, it's going to be in my work folder, programs. All right, I should be able to find that. Let's go to my C drive. And just like that, I've lost it already. Oh wait, there we go. Work. And this is the file that was just created. And here is all the data fields that Pennsylvania is looking for. And then from here, I do believe Pennsylvania gives you a website and credentials for logging in to upload the data. If there are errors on the state side, I know their error messages aren't quite as informative as ours, but you know, if you are getting some errors and you can't figure them out, that is a support call here, and we have people who are much more knowledgeable than I am, and they'll be able to help you out with that.
Fantastic.
Let's see, I thought of something else. Not sure how familiar you are with our help, but if I click on the red question mark, it did bring me to Pennsylvania. We have a folder here, and if I look at our table of contents, that has all of our state modules. So if you open that up, you can go to the Pennsylvania PIMS, and if you open that up, down at the bottom, and this is where I go to find a lot of my answers, if you go to the appendix for the appropriate version, we do have an appendix for the EWS, but if I click on the appendix for PIMS and the CTE fields, I get the layout. So I see all of the PIMS templates. So this is my course file template, and it will give me the field number. It will give me the field name, the length, the MMS field that it's pulling from, and then any requirements and notes. So that is very, very helpful. So here we see all of the different semesters that are valid for Pennsylvania. And then we have our course instructor table, we have the district fact table, and if there are any state-specific fields, it will give them in that field. And where's a good example of that? Now that I'm looking for it, it's not going to. Oh my goodness. Oh, here we go. So well, that's not a good one. There are some where it pulls, there is a state-specific field, but it's actually pulling from an MMS field. So this would be an example, the PA Secure ID field, and then, so this is what Pennsylvania calls it, but this is what it's called in MMS. Anyway, so lots of good information there. Ooh, that one's all in red. Roman code, wow. Not quite sure why that one was in red. So a lot of good information here. I refer to this one often, but I know there are some schools that wait for the MMS update. We find out about the Pennsylvania updates the same time that you do, so we don't get any advanced warning when changes are coming, big or small.
Okay. Right.
And so a lot of schools will wait for the MMS update, click on what changes have been made for this newest release, and then go from there. So rather than sifting through the hundreds of pages of documentation that the state puts out, they wait for the MMS update to find out what's new with the update. So I think that's kind of interesting. But so this information is here, really good information. I love our help. And that's just always a click away. Any other questions? Anything else with PIMS?
Nothing else with PIMS. But when you were showing me something earlier about saving a file to in the PIMS information.
Right. I said I was going to go back, and I didn't. All right. So I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to go back to my knowledge base, and I am going to do MMS online, save to local computer. I'm going to search. There we go, MMS online remote desktop configuration. And when you will have and I don't have an example of that on my computer, is you will have an icon on your desktop that is your remote desktop connection.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to open up something that's going to look like this, and this KBA will, there's your icon. You can right click on that and it will open up the properties. You can set to edit it actually, and then you click on the show options, and what you want to do, this should already be set up. You should be fine. Don't mess with any of that. But you want to click on the local resources. You want to click on printers and also more. That way you'll have access to your local printers. But clicking on the more will open up this screen right here. You're going to click on ports, open up drives, and you're going to click on your local C drive. Click OK, and back in the general tab, you're going to click, don't hit save as, just hit save. So that'll save that access to your local C drive. And I do believe it gives an example. Oh, it doesn't. I think he's updated this, that when you set this up and when you are in MMS generations and you are clicking on to save to your local computer, it is going to say, oh, I have it written down on my whiteboard. So if you let me click on here, it's not going to save for me that way, but do that. Click OK. OK. Oh, I don't want that. Oh, it's not working. I'm not set up for that. But once you get back to this right here, you're not going to see the C:/program files. What you are going to see is // and it's going to be a backwards double slash, and it's going to have TS client /C /. So if you have everything set up correctly, and when you navigate towards your local drive, once you do the remote desktop edit, and when you are clicking on the ellipsis to locate a path, you're going to actually see the server C drive. But then if you scroll down, it's usually down you're going to, if you scroll down, you'll see your local C drive. Um,
Okay.
and once you get back here, you're going to see that //TS, that's Tom, Sam, TS client, and then you know that it is set up correctly and that you are going to be saving to your local C drive.
Okay.
So that's the litmus test to know that you've set that up correctly. And I do believe that we have a knowledge base article that has that in there, so that, and this only would apply to an MMS online client, which I know you are. So I know that we host your data. So, but if you try walking through that knowledge base article and you know, you're not sure that you're quite getting it right, give us a call in support and we'll be able to help you with that. That's a quick and easy call,
Okay.
and we can help you
Perfect.
set that up.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
I cannot think of anything else at this time, Elaine.
All right. Thank you for joining me, and I don't know when this will end up being put up on our website, but be looking. So if there's any Friday forums that you miss, you'll be able to listen in. What I'll do is I'll create a key point slide that will cover all the questions that we hit on. So we're going to be doing that going forward. So just another resource to go back and listen to, or catch ones that you may have missed.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you.